Okay, this is going to be one of those weeks where nothing is going to go right. So again, I apologize. I have to have interruptions, but like I said, this is not a full-time job. And the world is 24 hours, so that means that there are people that must also work 24 hours. Hi everyone, it's audap. Let's continue our game of the letter running on Series X. Did we have her say this one already?
I can't exactly say it's like that, where I'm just the middleman after all. As much as I want to comment on it, I only know what's on the surface, not the in and outs. It's just that BRC and my boss are more hands-on with the legal stuff this time, despite having a separate department dedicated to it.
Maybe Mr. Wright helped with it too. They have their own legal team for this, don't they?
Well, they should have one, especially for a big property like this.
They have, but like I said, it's off our hands. Rose and I don't handle this stuff in the office. If anything, to me, this just means I'll be able to send the rest of the funds to Papa's treatment earlier.
I guess that makes a whole lot of sense. Officially off our instant noodle diet, aren't we?
Ash, has anyone ever told you that you have an uncanny way of ruining the mood?
What? I was just saying. A few more months of stuffing your face with those, and I'm sure you'll start to look like a noodle cup. That's a pretty picture.
At least I don't live off convenience store food. Or make poor, unassuming pressure cookers explode.
What? How did you... Oh, come on, Zach.
Sorry, it just came up while we were cooking earlier.
I'm impressed, Ashton Frey. You even made it to the news.
A one-time thing. And it wasn't as big as you seem to be imagining.
Oh, sure. Let's all pretend that one time you almost set my apartment on fire didn't happen too.
Hey, that was an accident.
You were making a salad, Ash.
Can we please move on to a different topic?
It helps. The casual talk, the harmless teasing, the mundane story is interesting enough to let time pass unnoticed. By the time lunch ends, shadows are no longer at the forefront of my mind. If it's the same for Isabella, for whatever troubles her, I can never tell. These things, the anxiety, the fear, they ain't seen easily, ain't easily forgotten after all.
You go on ahead. I've got a few things I need to ask Zach. I'll be downstairs in a minute.
Confusion briefly flashes in her eyes as she catches the keys he tosses over, but he doesn't give her an answer and waves for her to go.
How sure are you I won't be driving away with your Shirley?
You don't even have a license. Do you even know how to?
Papa taught me how. I'm probably a better driver than you. See you later, Zach. Thanks for the food.
Always has to have the last word, don't you?
You're welcome. I'll send you the recipe for the potatoes tonight.
A grin is back on her face when she leaves and closes the door behind her. For a little while after we're left alone, Ash goes wholly quiet, listening, waiting for her remaining footsteps in the hall to fade. The earlier amusement is gone from his face, replaced by what I can only describe as trepidation. I know that look all too well. When he's like this, he's expecting shit about to go down at some point soon.
That wasn't very nice, Ash. What was that with Isabella earlier? You're usually subtler with your questions.
They hired you.
Hired me who? Don't change the subject yet. What's really going on here?
The Wrights. Luke and Hannah Wright. You said your next gig is with them.
Is that what this is all about?
Just be careful around them. You have no idea what you're dealing with when it comes to that couple. I'd rather you stay as far away from them as possible, but you're already here. Isabella's their real estate agent. Seriously, of all the people in Luxburn.
Okay. I guess I'll just have to take your word for it.
He nods, claps a comforting hand on my back and turns to leave without another word. He's never been good with those. More often he fumbles with what he wants to say, but his actions alone are enough to tell me how grateful he is for the trust. He reaches for the knob as soon as he gets to the door, but doesn't turn it. Instead he looks back, gestures with his head towards the table. I don't need to follow his line of sight to know what he's going to ask about. He's likely taking notice of the moment he's likely taken notice of it the moment he entered the room.
You back on those? I haven't seen you taking them in a year.
Yeah, I kinda had to. It got worse after the film fest. The dreams, that is. I don't think I'll be doing that again anytime soon.
Heard about that. Don't drop it, though. You don't want Becca scolding you. She actually enjoyed the movie you made, and she's hard to please. Consider that a small victory.
You don't have to tell me. She already did. Rebecca and Bella both gave me an earful after I said the opposite. Promised them I wouldn't, but you can never tell. Hopefully, once I feel better, I'll be able to think about it properly. Speaking of Bella, she didn't open up to me, but maybe with you and Rebecca.
Yeah, I'll try. I can't promise anything, but I'll talk to her.
Thanks. That's all I'm asking.
This time, when he reaches for the door, he lets it close fully behind him without glancing back. A mild draft sweeps into the room as I close the door behind him, slightly disturbing the papers on the nearby fridge. A lone note flutters by my feet, the letters on the surface glaring at me with mute intensity. Ermengarde Mansion, H. Wright, 11 a.m. For luxury living. After Ashton's warnings, they all hold a different meaning now. October 27th, Thursday. The next 2 days rush by in a blur, altogether leaving a collective mess of work suddenly piling up and new unexpected acquaintances. Or friends? Depends on how you look at it, really. Either way, I'm stuck developing these photos at 3 in the morning to reach a deadline set by an over-eager art director. Don't get me wrong, Julius is good, has a vision, and knows what he wants. But damn, he can be too enthusiastic sometimes.
Doesn't matter when you couldn't sleep anyway.
There is nothing new in it, of course. After years of working as a freelance photographer, it's simply something I've grown to used to. Get to know people, build a client base, do good work, and cash in some late hours if need be. Rinse and repeat. It certainly takes a while to get some foothold on the field, but it's the kind of thing that pays off in the long run as long as you keep up at it. Given enough time, you might end up with big names on your client list. Names like the Wrights in particular. I never did pay much attention to them, but it's virtually impossible not to hear about them when the local news channel or paper has something to say on their name. A party here, an acquisition there. Sometimes it's a new business venture. Other times it's the everyday gossip that typically follows popular people like them. Not in a million years that I ever imagined I would end up working for such a high-profile couple. And between that and the fuss that comes with it, it leaves me no time to ponder over what happened to Isabella or why Ash is so adamant we keep away from the pair.
They do seem like the good folk, though, despite the whole fame thing.
Sure, there was a rumor running around years ago about him being involved in some business scandal. But just like every gossip blown out of proportion by the media, nothing came of it, and eventually it simply died down. Much is definitely left to be said for the husband, but I doubt a woman like Mrs. Wright would pick him if he doesn't have any good points at all. And Mrs. Wright, Hannah herself, though, she ain't particularly bad the way the press makes her out to be. The tabloids had it all wrong, that's for sure. For someone born with a silver spoon in her mouth, well, she ain't exactly what I was expecting. Among other things, the newfound friendship is what I least expected from her, but here we are. Although with a life as public as the Wrights, no wonder it's the woman who often gets the crappy end of the stick. I can't help but feel sorry for her. She's a real nice person when given the chance. Heck, she might have even ended up friends with Rebecca and Isabella too, if they weren't living worlds apart. Probably. The bead quickly pulls me back before my thoughts travel any further. In one practice motion, I carefully place the wet print I'm holding on a drying rack and amble over to my makeshift darkroom to get the last photos from the water bath. Inside the converted broom closet, the film processor lets out another soft clack before going on standby mode. At its mouth, a lone photograph sits on the tray, barely visible with the lack of light. It's the last one tonight for the set Mrs. Wright requested. I don't usually make this a habit, giving away stuff, that is. It's bad for the business, no matter how well-intentioned or generous you are. This exception, however. She did treat me well and was a pleasant companion all throughout the shoot. Even if she didn't ask, I would have probably given her a few prints just for the hell of it. Mrs. Wright ain't such a bad subject matter to begin with. And maybe this is just me, but for someone who has everything at the palm of her hands, all the money in the world, a loving husband, and a plenty big mansion to call home, she's lonely. She doesn't just appear to like it. It shows in the tone of her voice, how she moves, and most certainly in her smiles, always hidden behind the glamour for the world to never see. Sometimes for people like her, small things like these helps, a little reminder that the world can be kind too. Water drips from the paper as I blindly pick it up and gently lay it on another tray, holding a decent amount of photo flow. A few seconds under the solution is all it needs before it's ready for drying. No good rushing the last one, even if my body's already screaming for some decent snooze. My hand fumbles with the light switch, moving towards it with familiarity, while I fish for a squeegee among the mess of tools on a drawer with the other. The bulb flickers twice before its glow settles and casts a soft light on the tiny space. When I glance back down, squeegee in hand, ready to finish the process and finally call it a night.
What on earth?
Her head is gone. Blurred and distorted beyond recognition, rather. The area completely smudged over, leaving no trace of the same sweet smile the good woman carried in all the previous prints.
Damn, that was too careless.
A common mistake to make, of course, if one is negligent enough to pick a newly processed photo in the dark, but apparently I did. It has happened before, loads of times actually. I still can't help but feel a small pang of frustration over one mistake a newbie would likely make. With a sigh, I reach up for the switch again, intending to develop a new one from scratch.
It could pass off for one of those supernatural pictures they show on TV, though.
A memory clicks, one cursor's thought in the sea of many, and a short yet distinct second from the day before. The glimpse is all I got, but it's enough to burn the image in my mind. There was a shadow. No. A woman. In her 20s, or early 30s maybe? But with how far her flesh alone had become, it's not possible to tell at first glance. The skin itself has already taken a sickly pale color, rotten in most parts, blood dripping from every open gash and lesion on her body. Bony hands grip Mrs. Wright's neck like a noose, staining the skin underneath with a vibrant shade of scarlet. Nothing but malice fills the gleam in her eyes.
Zachary?
Not for me, but for Mrs. Wright.
Zach? Is something the matter?
Oh no, there's nothing wrong. I just remembered something, that's all. Let's get back to the pictures. Can you move a bit more to the left, yeah?
The memory alone is enough to make me retch. I brushed it off then. A trick of the eye, I told myself, or a product of the heat. The weather has been unexpectedly warm recently, so it shouldn't be too surprising for such things to happen. And while blaming this on the usual fatigue and overworked brain, the weather or an amateur error on my part is far more convenient. It makes a whole lot of sense than what the small voice inside my head whispers. The same tiny voice that only makes itself known when something's afoul. The same one that lent a curious ear to Isabella's worries at the mansion. And with each second I spend staring at this photograph, the murmurs in my head only grow louder against my ears. Someone has to know. Show the photo to Ash, show it to Ash. I don't know why I would show it to Ash. But if I show it to Hannah, she is possessed at this point in time, I think. So it makes more sense to show it to Ash. Ash will give me flack for this one, he will. I can already hear what he's going to say about the moment I bring it up. Hell, before he even sees anything, I'll wager. The guy is a skeptic through and through, and it'll take more than my account for him to even consider this. But when you've been there, seen something enough to raise the hairs on the back of your neck and leave you wanting to flee or hide, what he thinks is the least of my concerns. I am no hero, and that's the title best reserved for someone else. Still, if this will help him change his mind, it's worth a try. Isabel's gone and done the same thing, didn't she? Outside, the sun has yet to rise. I still got a few hours before dawn, good enough time to mull over how I'll go about this with him. Plenty of space to check if I'll get the same result if I redo the process again. The film processor hums back to life at my touch. The light switch gives off a soft click, and the darkness embraces the small closet again.
Somehow those urban legends don't sound so silly now.
Sometimes I wish Ash would make himself easier to find. 24 messages, 13 phone calls, and one visit to his flat later. I still have no idea which rock in Luxembourg he went off to hide under again. The guy has his own place, but refuses to stay in it. Has his own phone, but doesn't answer any of his calls or give any indication he's gotten my messages. Most of the time, he'll just show up in my front door. Sometimes in the middle of the night, complaining about how uncomfortable it is to sleep at the back of his car. As if the old couch in my flat is any better. Nothing new for him, though, but a bit frustrating, really. There's the police precinct, of course. Then again, he's not there most of the time either, and if that's also true for today, he's likely out on another stakeout. There's nothing much to do for me but to wait if that's the case.
Let's just hope I'm lucky enough today.
While Luxborn is a relatively peaceful city boasting a low crime rate, its precinct stays abuzz with activity. As soon as I open the glass front doors, murmurs coming from the people waiting in the lobby welcome me. Officers can occasionally be seen shuffling in and out of the rooms, greeting civilians with a casual smile and a polite nod. Some, though, look a little worse for wear, like their receptionist, who looks at me with much disdain the moment I arrive. Thankfully, I won't have to deal with him today. Before I can even step in, Ashton's voice, though low, comes from the hallway adjacent to the lobby.
Not even for just 1 minute?
No. The case was dismissed, remember?
You were the one handling that case.
If you want access to those records, you've got to ask Chief. I was taken off it before shit went to hell. Why do you even bother? Even Professor Clark seems to have given up on that.
Well, Never mind, you won't understand.
Right. I know you owe Professor Clark a lot, but the right guy isn't just someone you mess with. They've got the money. Who knows what else gets swept under the rug with them involved.
That takes a special kind of ignorant not to know.
And a smart person to know which boundaries he can't cross. You're a bright guy, you'll figure it out. In any case, I've got to get going. Another missing person case on my hand. Benjamin on the front desk looks like he's about to maul someone after the fourth one yesterday. Murders, people missing, what a time to be alive. Man, I miss the old Luxburn.
You and me both. I'll see ya. Gonna go grab some lunch.
He notices me first as soon as he enters the lobby and pauses. Confusion briefly crosses his face until I fish out the phone from my pocket and wave it up. Frowning, he pulls his own mobile out, wordlessly fiddling with it for a few seconds before sighing heavily. There ain't any annoyance in him when he glances up, though, only mild exasperation and what might be a hint of amusement.
Stop taking pointers from Isabella. This is gonna get old soon.
At least use your phone properly.
It's an alarm clock, a good note-taking device, a halfway decent camera, and maybe a music player too. If I'm being nice. What else do I need it for?
I don't know, keeping in contact maybe?
When he merely shrugs, I know I've struck a chord. He's far from holding a piece of technology in contempt, of course. Ash has always been nothing but practical from the start, and technology is useful. Only when he gets too focused on one thing, like a case he's handling, he tends to forget there are other things around him. A little reminder and a nudge in the right direction can get him a long way.
I've got an email on that social media site the girls roped us into joining.
That doesn't make any sense. Also, you've got an account before any of us had one.
For policing purposes? Anyway, why are you here? I thought you have something scheduled today. Or was that yesterday?
That was yesterday. Look, about that, there's something I want you to see.
He stops me with a tap on my shoulder, walks past me straight to the door, and gestures with his head towards the very irked receptionist when I raise an eyebrow in question.
Over lunch. I haven't eaten anything since last night, and Benjamin there doesn't really like loiterers around here.
Wordlessly, I follow after him, but not after sending the poor guy behind the table an apologetic smile. As expected, he takes a seat in the farthest corner of the cafe, a good way from the window, but easily allows a view of who comes and goes, secluded enough not to be disturbed by the lunch hour rush or be overheard by a curious bystander. If I didn't know this lunch he invited me to, I would automatically assume I got dragged into another stakeout. After years of knowing him, though, this has simply become one of my many habits he hasn't gotten used to. Food arrives minutes later. Slice of their vegetarian quiche for me. Meanwhile, Ash has opted for a cup of coffee plus a gracious serving of...
You having cake for lunch?
He shrugs and then proceeds to dig in without even a hint of remorse. Frankly, it's like seeing a child get his Christmas presents early.
Don't tell Becca. I'll get an earful. It's just for today.
You should listen to her, though. The kind of work you do, you'll need to eat something other than sweets. I don't want to see you drop dead in front of my apartment again.
I told you, just this once. Have you been hanging out with Becca lately? You're beginning to sound like her.
Nah, just for some recipes. But she has the right to worry, you know? It's like she's taking care of two kids. One bitches on sweets, while the other on cup noodles. At least Bella knows how to cook.
Hey, I can at least boil something. Wait, that's easy, right? I mean, you just put water in and...
No, don't even think about it. You destroyed your own kitchen once by sticking a pressure cooker on it. I think my sister is a whole lot better than you. And this is coming from someone who has no other choice but to eat her cooking for some time.
To be fair, he generally appears offended at that last remark. Hate will be too strong for word to describe how Sis and him usually interact whenever they're in the same room. Though whatever appropriate word it is, I can say with most certainty that the feeling is mutual for both. Ash thinks she nags too much, while Sis thinks he's a trouble magnet. I should stay away from him. They're both technically right in their own assessments.
How's your sister, by the way? Still bullying white guys?
What should I say? She's married to one now?
You do know she's married to one now.
I hope she doesn't end up poisoning him with her cooking.
Pot calling the kettle black?
She can't be better than me.
Actually, she is now. They're planning to start a restaurant sometime in the future.
I was bedridden for days after eating some of the stuff she whipped up. And now you're letting her cook for other people?
Don't exaggerate. It was just for one day and you're the one who refused to leave your apartment. You should come by though. Sis gave birth a few days ago. Girl, I've only seen the pictures. But I might visit sometime after everything's settled down. Too many backlogs to go through for now.
No way in hell. She'll just find something to criticize again. Last time, it was Shirley.
He makes a show of being utterly mortified, though I'm quite sure he doesn't mean any of that. He might not say it straight out, but I'm pretty sure he's enjoying the small visits whenever he can. Something about it reminds him of his own family, sort of like making up for the one he never got back after his parents separated. Sore spot, that one topic. One thing he never ever brings up in conversation, but if he can help it, and I've never seen the need to be nosy. There are some wounds you're just not meant to open, and for the both of us, the sentiment goes the same way.
As if you ain't already on a shit list. You're just afraid of her.
In your dreams. But I'll think about it. Can't just drop this thing at the moment.
His change in tone is subtle, but his aggravation over the matter hangs completely palpable in the air.
Still no closer?
The opposite, actually. There's been some slip-ups here and there. Careless mistakes, and let's just say I'm waiting for him to make another one. What about you? How are things on your end?
All piled up on top of the other. But I can manage. Still recovering from the expenses for the movie, so the surge in new projects helps. Well, there's this one thing.
The expression on his face grows more puzzled with each photo I spread on the table. There's about 8 of them, all of it reprints of the same thing. Mrs. Wright's distorted head in the photos. He takes a minute to go through each, eyeing the prints warily. The furrow on his brow doesn't ease even as he gathers all the photos into one pile and sets them in one neat stack in front of me with a heavy sigh.
Hannah Wright?
Yeah. How did you...
The locket. She never takes it off. Evan's family heirloom.
I won't even think about asking why or how he knows that. If he's investigating them, he'll likely have already dug up every unimaginable dirt on them, including family history.
Are you done with your work with them?
Yesterday, yeah. It's just a small feature for a magazine. Interviews, photos, standard stuff, nothing big. But see, here's the thing. I don't know how else to put this out there without sounding crazy, but there really is something odd with that place. Remember the letter?
He drags in a breath, reaches up his nose and pinches it, like the action alone will help grant him all the patience in the world to continue this conversation.
Please tell me this isn't about that again.
No, Ash, you've got to listen this time.
I am listening, and I can't believe that just came out of your mouth. These are some blurred out photos, and that letter is just a stupid prank. I expected this from Isabella, not you. You're the photographer here. I don't see any need to get worked up over this.
I know what you mean, but will you hear me out first?
Ash leans back on his seat and doesn't say anything further. He gestures for me to continue with a wave of his hand, impatience clearly on his face. Any other person telling him this, and he'll walk out without batting an eye. I suppose the only reason he's giving me the benefit of the doubt is because we know each other.
Ash, I don't easily buy into these things as much as you do. Yesterday, though, behind Hannah.
He blinks at that, his eyebrows lifting momentarily before settling into a deep frown.
Hannah? Since when were you on a first-name basis with the right missus?
Why does that even matter?
I thought you said this was just a gig.
His voice stays level, but the accusation in it is as clear as day. It hits a nerve in me somehow, more than that tone usually does. I get where he's coming from, but it's not the point here. Of all things I said, my connection with the Brights is the first thing he points out. As much as I want to keep my annoyances at bay, I can't stop it seeping into my voice.
That's completely beside the point here, Ash.
I warned you, Zach.
I get it, alright? But you can't just expect me to turn it down after I made a commitment to a client. I've got to put food on my table.
I didn't say you shouldn't, but you should not be messing with them.
I wasn't messing with them.
And this isn't?
He waves the photos in front of me before dropping the pile on the table with a loud smack. I don't need to look to know we've already attracted some attention from the lunchtime crowd. Besides, turning away from him feels almost the same as admitting he's right. There are things more important than his damn case right now. I wish he'd see that.
It was a job, and that ain't how these photos were intended to come out. You think I'd go out of my way just to edit something like this? There's something weird going on here.
And you think Luke Wright will see it that way? You think the Wright missus will find it amusing?
I did not do this for my amusement, Ash. People's lives might be at stake here.
If you understood that in the first place, we wouldn't be having this stupid talk. Luke fucking Wright is a dangerous man, Zach. Keep hanging around them and you'll find yourself burnt to a crisp in your apartment or floating down a river 3 days later. This case is...
Will you stop talking about the damn case for once and just listen to me? Why do you think Isabella's...
Don't you dare bring her into this. We're talking about you and this stupid...
Oh, of course you don't want to talk about it. Because you're fucking afraid there's some damn truth to what she's saying now that there's two of us.
Every expression drains from his face as soon as the words come out of my mouth. They've hit their mark. Each utterance scathes, sharp, with nothing but anger and the truth. Yet, they are also things I won't typically say out loud in good company, and rather ease people into it before letting it fall. Almost immediately, a wave of regret washes over me.
Ash, dude, that ain't what I meant to...
You said enough, Zach.
Without another word, he stands, his chair scraping loudly against the floor, all while my brain races to find something to fix this. Ours ain't a fragile relationship by any means. I'd like to think we've gone past the stage when we find everything the other says insulting, but there are times when letters and phrases alone can cut deeper than any blade. Mine might even leave a scar. He doesn't let me, though, however. Instead, he sets a card in front of me. The name is familiar, but amidst the cloud of remorse swirling inside my head, I can't bring myself to recall where I've seen it.
You shouldn't be running blind. Call this guy. He'll be less inclined to shout at you. Might even talk some sense into you.
I don't see his face when he leaves, and it's only when the store's bell chimes again do I breathe. Of all the places, it never crosses my mind I'd end up wandering into the public library today, considering I rarely ever visited. Somehow, there has always been this kind of disconnect between me and the books in general. Sure, some of them held my attention in my youth during the brief times of the day I was left on my own with nothing to do. I went through the whole of Grant's collection, as a matter of fact. Read all of them twice or thrice even. But they never did hold it for long. Most of it never even sticked. Especially after I learned it's simply easier to do things myself if I want to learn stuff. This ain't in the plan in the first place. But after that argument, I really don't have any other choice. Nothing but quiet greets me inside, though. Not the typical mum one would associate with a library, but one akin to the hush prior to an impending trouble. Or perhaps I'm just overthinking again. I really like to think I'm just thinking too much about this, and that this is just a lack of sleep talking. Regardless, apart from a group of students murmuring in a corner somewhere, the place is free of its usual visitors. All while my footsteps echo in a manner unsettling enough to raise the hairs at the back of my neck. Much to my relief, it does not take long to find him, being the only occupant in this side of the room. Professor Andrew Clark. I've never personally met the man, but Ash has spoken highly of him several times. In fact, he is Ash's go-to guy when something's troubling him with a case. My steps are unsure as I approach. At any rate, he greets me with a warm smile, like a grandson he hasn't seen in a long time.
Ashton's friend, I take it. Zachary. You'll have to forgive this old man if I don't get your name right.
Oh, no, you got it. It's Zach. Zachary Steele, Professor Clark.
He gestures at the empty seat across the table while he returns his books. The next couple minutes pass in relative silence as he continues to read and take notes from the pile he's accumulated on the table. Maybe I shouldn't have taken a book from... Maybe I should have taken a book first before heading there. But before I can even get far into that idea, the professor clicks the book shut and sets it atop the stack next to him.
Ashton told me you were hoping to get answers from me.
At my confused look, he lets out a small chuckle.
He sent a message ahead. A friend needs to have some sense knocked into him. In verbatim. That boy never changes.
I wasn't really expecting he'd do that.
Although I'm not quite sure what I could share, I'll do my best to help.
Of course, there are a lot of things I want to ask. How do we get out of this mess is the first among hundreds of concerns in my head. But in the presence of someone I barely know, the thoughts won't easily form. He is nothing but patient, however, and with enough time to mull over, a question finally forms.
Do you believe in the paranormal, Professor?
It's supernatural, actually. Don't worry. It's a common mistake to make, but they really are two different things. The other one deals with what we can't explain at the moment, while the other are things we may not have an explanation to. Here.
He places a couple of papers in front of me, the very same one he was writing on earlier. A study of Luxburn's supernatural culture in a nutshell.
A friend of mine wrote that a few years ago. He took interest in the city after reading about the stories. I have to agree with him here. Even stories dealing with things you don't see with the naked eye can be rife with culture, and this city thrives on it. Just ask the locals.
Like ghosts, for example.
Among other things. The interpretation has changed over the years, though. Various religions, for example, have their own version. It might not always be a spirit now. It could be a memory, or an imprint, an echo, so to speak. Some are born from curses, even, out of great anger, hatred, or pain. There was this one story. Here it is.
Another book is pulled out from the stack and placed open atop the papers, while he speaks with such passion that it makes me wonder if some part of him believes these to be true. It is interesting, though, even if I'm personally not a fan of such stories. And soon hours pass without my notice.
In the end, it asked for something to be sacrificed in order to destroy whatever anchors the wraith. A sad tale, that one, but the simplest grudge can bring the ugliest, even in the kindest person, with some people none the wiser. Oh, I'm sorry, I just went on.
Nah, it's good. Are you familiar with the Ermengarde Mansion, though?
Of course, that goes without saying. Who hasn't heard of the local legend? Although, word of the mouth is, someone has already bought it.
Yeah, the right couple. It was a close friend who handled that sale.
So I heard. Well, don't think the house being bought by anyone would stop us from talking about it. What is it about the mansion, then?
I just want to ask what you think of it, sir.
We're going to need more than an afternoon for that, young man. You see, it's the kind that has changed over the years, passed down from one person to the next. Sometimes, it's the Lord William who haunts the place. There are versions where it's the lady of the house. But my favorite, a personal favorite, would have to be the ones that followed after the disappearance of the kind daughter.
Well, what about these then?
There's a moment of hesitation on my part before I pull out Mrs. Wright's photos and lay them all in front of him. Unlike Ash, though, the professor inspects each print with great interest. That gives me some hope, at least.
When were these taken?
Just the other day. Do you think those are the same?
Perhaps. Perhaps not. There were certainly instances when the film would pick up what the human eyes weren't able to see. But then, it could also have been human error.
I didn't edit it in any way. You have my word on that, Professor. They all just came out like that.
Then, if it is what you're thinking, I'd strongly advise against doing something reckless and further tangling with them. Accounts about them may be riveting to you, but most of it often ends in an unpleasant manner.
What about those people in the house? If there is something in there, shouldn't they know? I'm sure they're already familiar with the legends, but...
Some people might deserve it, however.
Deserve what, sir?
All of a sudden, the tenderness in the professor's eyes disappears, his face becoming unreadable. As though catching himself, he hastily clears his throat, gathers his books, and rises from his seat.
Professor?
I'm sorry. I just remembered something I neglected to do. You'll have to excuse me, Zachary.
All right. Do you need any help with that?
Don't let my looks fool you, son. I can still carry a few hundreds. I've been doing this for years. I'll see you some other time if you have any other questions.
Of course. It was nice knowing you, Professor.
He doesn't hear it, however. In a few short strides, he's out of the library, leaving me and every piece of this whole mess amidst the oppressiveness. Amidst the oppressive stillness. Despite the answers gleaned, more questions surfaced. If there is a single way out of this, I hope we find it soon. The moon is well into the night sky by the time I make it back home. My heavy treads and the sound of traffic outside echoing in my ears, filling the empty room with some semblance of life. Nana would scold me if she ever hears me walk like that. But after today, I really can't give a damn about everything. The mattress creaks under my weight as I unceremoniously flip down onto it, and I find myself looking at the paper under my grip. An invitation and a request to cover an event, the Wright's housewarming party, tomorrow evening. If only it were that easy, but it'll give me a chance to talk to her about that thing in their house. With a sigh, I let my hand fall to the side of the bed along with the invitation. I'll think about it tomorrow. My head ain't muddled with the thoughts of a headless woman and the haunting smiles of a ghost. Belatedly, it occurs to me that the last meal I ate had been the one with Ashton. And an empty, gnawing ache makes itself known, but I can't bring myself to stand up. Today was a complete waste of time, and frankly a disappointment. I don't like this. The lack of certainty, the disquiet, the lack of stable ground to stand on, the part where I do not know what will come tomorrow. Ever since that damn letter, everything's been thrown out of the loop. I wish everything stayed the same. Routine would have been easier to make sense than this. Closing my eyes, I'll let the noise from the streets below lull me to sleep. At the very least, that's the one thing that hasn't changed.
October 29th, Saturday.
I keep forgetting it's not the A button for everything. Okay, why don't we stop it there? This is audap. You have been watching The Letter, running on Series X. Yeah, that's getting even more interesting. I'm actually surprised how interesting it is. I wasn't expecting much from this this visual novel, especially with the art being kind of odd. But I think it's really well done so far. And hopefully it has a disastrous ending, because that's how I like my visual novels. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching. I will see you at the next stream.